What's growing on, gardeners? It's Saturday, April 27th, and it is a beautiful afternoon here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Today's video is for all of the naysayers that told me all of the different things that I couldn't grow in my yard and garden because of where I live. But I ignored them and I did it anyway. And on today's video, I'm going to take you around my yard and show you just how beautiful all these things that can't grow here look, because it is spring and they are all waking up.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
I live in Zone 8B, southeastern North Carolina, around the Wilmington, North Carolina area, and we live in a particularly challenging location to grow things because we have brutally hot, humid, wet, subtropical summers, but freezing cold, temperate winters. So our winters are generally too cold to grow the subtropicals, and our summers are too hot, humid, and wet to grow the temperate species. So as a result, when people move here, a lot of people just give up and they think they can't grow things. But we are human beings. We can use our brains and we can adjust the microclimates of where we live to actually grow temperate and subtropical species. It turns out, with a little bit of ingenuity, this is a great place to grow food. 6 years ago, I told you I was going to grow an avocado tree in ground in North Carolina, and the naysayers came at me saying there is no way this is ever going to happen. Well, I asked my avocado tree that's been planted in ground for 5.5 years, and it seems to disagree. It looks like it's doing pretty great to me, wouldn't you say? Now, this is a semi-dwarf variety called Leela, and I specifically picked it because I could keep it at a smaller size and I'd be able to protect it. In fact, you can still see the remnants of the protection. I have my incandescent Christmas lights that you see inside the tree. That's how I keep this tree warm. I also have this water barrel. It's a 60-gallon pickle barrel in the back that I use for radiative heat. And as a result, I'm able to grow this tree all winter long with great success. And just look at this baby right here. Look at all of the fruits on this avocado tree. I have some nice avocados forming, and they are all over the place. This thing had an amazing super bloom this spring, and you can see all of these beautiful fruits. Now, avocado trees tend to drop their fruit greatly. They lose probably 90% of the crop that they set. But I still think that I'm going to have a really good season because these fruits are literally everywhere. In fact, such a tremendous success this has been, I plan on adding another avocado tree to my yard this spring. I'm just waiting for an online nursery to get their stock up in the month of May. Now, I'm up against my house right now, and I want you to see just how insanely thick the caliper of this trunk is. I mean, this thing is a monster. That is how well this little dwarf avocado tree, well, semi-dwarf, is thriving where I live. It is an absolute beast, and the branches go all the way up, and I simply prune it so it doesn't get any taller than about 7 feet. It'll get a little bit taller in the summer, but I just cut it back for the winter so I can protect it. Easy peasy. About 6 years ago, I said I wanted to grow lots of citrus trees in ground in North Carolina, and again, the naysayers told me that citrus does not grow in ground in North Carolina. The winters are too cold. Well, once again, I asked my Owari Satsuma tree, does it hate being in ground here? And maybe 500 oranges later over the years, it told me no, it likes it just fine. I have had absurd harvests off of this tree over the past 2 years. Just absolutely monster fruit set, and it just got done what may have been its biggest bloom ever. And it is covered in hundreds of little baby oranges. Now, once again, your Satsuma trees, your citrus trees in general, they pretty much always overproduce, and then they will naturally thin their crop. But again, there are still hundreds of little baby citrus on this tree. So much so that I think that I'm going to have to, again, manually thin it because they won't drop enough. This tree just loves setting fruit. What I quickly learned after moving here that, if it weren't for about half a dozen nights a year, we could grow some really cool stuff here. You see, we get about 2 nights every single year that fall into the teens, and about half a dozen nights that are below 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And those are really the 6 nights a year that mess everything up. Well, again, I'm a human being. Why can't I just protect my trees so they never drop below those cold temperatures? If I could just defend against those handful of nights, everything becomes possible. So I simply developed methods that could accommodate a handful of cold nights every single year. For example, citrus are natural understory trees, and I have a little forest canopy in the rear property of my yard. So although it gets cold back here, the forest canopy protects them from frost, and I simply use these 60-gallon water barrels to keep them warm. So right here I have a Cara red navel orange, a Meiwa kumquat, and a brown select satsuma, and they have been growing in ground. They're going on their 3rd season, and they've never been damaged by cold. And then it's been going so well, I decided I would put my Morrow blood orange, which I've been growing in containers for 5 years now. That's about as hardy as the Cara, so I figured why not put them in ground. And all I do is I pull some agricultural fabric that lets light in and is breathable on those really cold nights, and I can leave that on for a couple weeks at a time and keep them warm. It's just that simple. In fact, so easy has it been to grow citrus here that I'm up to 9 varieties of citrus in ground all throughout my yard, like my Meyer lemon right here that is on its 4th year. This thing produces like absolute mad. And in the front yard with full northern exposure, I planted a sugar bell tree, and that is thriving as well. Which brings me to my next point. People gave me such a headache when I planted my citrus and avocado trees up against my house foundation. They told me, these trees get huge, they're going to destroy my house. But yet here I am 6 years later with no problems at all. How could that be? That's because I chose naturally small trees. I got my citrus trees grafted onto trifoliate rootstock, so they're never going to get taller than 5 to 6 feet with annual pruning. And I specifically selected a semi-dwarf avocado that only grows to be about 10 to 12 feet unpruned. And of course, I keep it maintained with annual pruning to about 7 feet throughout the year. And it's been a piece of cake. These are soft wooded fruit trees. They don't have really invasive roots. They've been so easy to manage. So despite the close proximity to my foundation, I picked small trees on purpose, and I just keep them pruned. You can keep your trees small, you just have to stay on top of them. Prune them in the winter time and give them little summer haircuts here and there to make sure that they don't overgrow and get out of bounds. Now this will take a little bit of research. You can't go to a big box store and grab a random fruit tree on a random unknown rootstock and plant it. It could get too big. But if you do your homework and you select either naturally dwarfing varieties or you get them grafted onto dwarf rootstock, the world becomes your oyster. For example, I'm growing an ungrafted Meyer lemon because Meyer lemons are a natural dwarf. They only grow to be 6 to 8 feet tall, and I chose to grow this like a shrub, a little bush, and I just prune it every winter, and then throughout the summer I give it periodic haircuts so it doesn't get a whole lot taller. And it's never going to grow taller than 6 feet. I will be able to maintain this as a little hedge indefinitely. Which brings me to my 4th point. The naysayers went bonkers when I planted my fig trees only 6 feet apart and near my fence, only 30 inches off the back of my fence. They told me that they were way too close together. Hadn't I ever seen a fig tree orchard before? They plant their trees 15 to 20 feet apart. Well, that's because you need to get farm equipment around the trees. I'm not going to drive a truck back here. I'm just going to come out with my basket and hand pick the fruit. And again, pruning shears and saws exist. I can simply maintain the trees to the size that I want to keep them at. It's really that simple. Now, before you say anything and you wonder why they're all white, that's because I sprayed them with Surround WP Kale Clay, because we have issues with the ambrosia beetle here in the spring, so I sprayed all the trunks down so I won't get any boring infestations. But does it look like to you that these fig trees are suffering in any way, shape, or form being planted so closely together? They look absolutely beautiful to me, and they produce off the charts. Just incredible yields that I've been showing you for years. And again, there is no issues with me fitting in between my fence and the trees. You can see I'm easily walking behind, no problems at all. Because again, I prune the fig trees. I make it so they don't touch the back of the fence. And I pinch off any growth that is growing out in that direction, and I can keep them nice and neat and orderly. They told me I couldn't grow bananas in North Carolina. Bananas are not tolerant to frost and freeze. If they get frozen, they will die down to the ground. Well, admittedly, bananas have been one of the most difficult things I've tried to grow here because our winters are genuinely way too cold to grow them for fruit, anything other than an ornamental that dies down to the ground and then grows back for the next season. But the problem is bananas need about a year and a half in order to preserve a pseudostem, make a flower, and ripen fruit. So there's never going to be an 18-month period in North Carolina where we are frost and freeze free. It's never going to happen. So I decided to take on the challenge anyway, and what I do is I place stakes around my plants, and then I put a metal cage and I stuff them full of straw, and that is able to overwinter some of the pseudostems. A lot of them still do die back. However, I have been successful at getting fruit with this method. Now, while I have been successful at getting fruit from my bananas, the caveat is I've only been successful with one variety, and that is the dwarf Orinoco. For whatever reason, this is an exceptionally cold-hardy dwarf banana that's fairly easy to protect. It can tolerate a light frost, and I guess it has a really fast fruiting and ripening cycle. This clump of bananas has produced fruit for me 3 out of the last 4 years. It's been pretty reliable, and as you can see, my straw method has been successful at overwintering the pseudostems. These pseudostems survived, and they are producing new growth. All of them are. They are all waking up. They all survive. So it is highly likely that I will probably get at least 1 rack of bananas from this plant right here. The naysayers told me that traditional grapes will not grow here in the coastal Carolinas. All you can grow are native muscadine varieties, which I don't really like. And that's because it's too hot, humid, and wet, and all of the fungal diseases will destroy the fruits. And if the fruits don't get destroyed, Pierce's disease will kill the vines. Well, I decided to do some research, and I learned about the great grape expert T.V. Munson that bred all of these different varieties of super disease-resistant grapes back in the 1800s. And I found this variety called Mrs. Munson. This makes it possible to grow completely sprayless organic grapes in the coastal Carolinas, all the way down to Florida and South Texas. This is an absolutely incredible variety, and it's also one of the best tasting grapes I've ever had. The fruit is so complex and delicious, and I need to take you in for a closer look. I think this vine is going on its 3rd year, and last year I got an amazing harvest on it, and I'm so happy with the way it turned out. But you need to see the fruit set on it this year. Look at all of these clusters of grapes. And last year, I didn't have to spray these vines at all. They did fantastic. And they ripened their grapes. I did not really get much rot. The clusters weren't 100% full, but it is a young grapevine, so I think it may just take a little bit more time. It is just beautiful, and it's been so easy to maintain. You can see this plant is just totally pristine. And so great has this Mrs. Munson variety been that I decided to get a little more confident, and I also added a Mars seedless variety. Now, this is not as disease resistant, so I'm taking a chance on this one, but I planted it last fall. It's just starting to wake up. Now, the Mrs. Munson variety over here is seeded, so you do have to avoid the seeds, which is really no big deal, and the flavor more than makes up for it. I'm going to try this seedless variety just for fun. I really wanted to plant an Asian pear tree in my yard, but everybody told me that I need 2 trees because you need 2 unique varieties for cross-pollination for Asian pears to set fruit. And hey, this is technically true, but I didn't want to dedicate the space for 2 trees. I only wanted 1. So I decided to put on my thinking cap and find a way that I could grow multiple fruits in one. So about a year and a half ago or so, I showed you how to multi-graft an Asian pear tree so you could have numerous varieties on one single tree in order to have cross-pollination without the need for a second tree. So what I did was I bought a Chojuro Asian pear and I bud grafted on Hosui and Korean Giant. So all 3 tiers of my espalier setup right here are 3 different varieties. On this first cable right here, I have Hosui. On the second cable right here, I have Korean Giant. And then on the top cable right here, I have the actual variety of Chojuro, which is incredible. And it worked like a charm. They are setting fruit. So on this lower tier right here is the Hosui variety. You can see all of the Asian pears setting beautifully on this little tiny branch. On the second tier right here is the Korean giant variety, and again, you can see successful cross-pollination with lots of different fruits. And then on the very top, we have the Chojuro. Now, because this is such a young tree yet, I'm going to have to remove most of these fruits. However, I can probably maintain about 6 of them total, 2 on each tier. So I'll just save the best looking fruits and I'll be able to have my first harvest this year. If a multi-grafted fruit tree like this sounds interesting to you, I'll place a link down in the video description for a video where I showed you exactly how I grafted this tree. When I moved here, I had no idea what it would be like to try and grow tomatoes in this climate. I grew up in New Jersey and I lived in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and tomatoes there are so easy to grow. But when I moved down here, the naysayers told me I would never be able to keep tomatoes alive in the summer. It's too hot, it's too humid, it's too stressful for the plants, and there is just too much disease. And aside from growing bananas, which has been my biggest challenge here, growing tomatoes may have been the second biggest challenge. And admittedly, in the beginning, the naysayers were right. All of my tomato plants were dead by late July because of our horrible conditions. But I got to thinking, what is actually making the tomato plants give up the ghost so early in the season? And what I found out was it was the heat, the temperatures, and the strong sun. The pollination would stop because of the high dew points and the high temperatures at night, and then the plants would get so stressed out from the heat and the high UV that they would just get beaten down and they would get weak, and then the diseases would take them over and then the plants would die. So I thought to myself, well, if I can protect my citrus and my avocados and other things from the cold, why can't I protect my tomatoes from the heat? Thus, the shade tunnel was born, and I've experimented over the last 2 years growing tomatoes under shade in the summer, and I can honestly say that I will never, ever, no matter where I live, grow tomatoes without shade cloth in the summer ever again. The results are just incredible. So last year I grew all of my indeterminate tomatoes in straw bales underneath this shade tunnel, and I had not only the best tomato season that I've ever had since I moved to North Carolina, but the best tomato season of my life. They thrived in the dappled light underneath the shade tunnel. The only problem was, because I planted them in straw bales and it's so hot, humid, and wet here, the straw bales decomposed, so they actually wound up shrinking, and then the roots became exposed to the air, and the plants died off at the middle end of August. Had I not planted them in the straw bales, I think they would have made it all throughout the summer, all the way up until frost maybe even, or at least hurricane season until a storm destroyed them. So this year I'm learning from my mistakes, and I think I have the final solution to my problems. I'm growing all of these in a sterile medium inside these 20-gallon fabric grow bags because the medium won't break down like the straw bales will. However, they will still be trellised up in this structure and they will be protected under shade cloth. So I will get all of the benefits of shade without the issue of the area that the roots are growing shrinking on me throughout the year. So I think this is exactly what I'm looking for. So why were the naysayers wrong? Well, the naysayers were wrong because they made their judgments based on growing everything out in the open in the weather they got. And you just can't control your weather. However, you can control your climate to a degree, and I found that it's very easy to add 10 degrees of heat protection in the summer and add 10 degrees of cold protection during the winter. So if you're okay with growing things in that 10-degree margin on either side of the year, you can have incredible results in areas that otherwise wouldn't be able to grow these plants out in the open. Am I going to be able to grow a coconut palm or a mango tree here in North Carolina? No, because it's outside of that temperature buffer. But things like citrus and things like apples can all grow here comfortably if you're willing to protect the citrus in the winter and protect the apples in the summer. And it really is that easy. So next time somebody tells you that something can't be done, ask yourself, can it not be done because it actually is impossible? Or can it not be done because they just weren't willing to put in the work? If the answer is the latter and you're willing to put in the work, it is stunning what you can do. So everybody, I sure hope you enjoyed this garden tour. I'm really happy that spring is off to a beautiful start, and hopefully we will get a mild summer this year. I'm crossing my fingers, but you never know here. But the point I'm trying to make is no matter what your conditions are, you can grow more than you think you can if you're willing to just do a little bit of legwork and protection in the winter and a little bit of legwork and protection in the summer. The world is your oyster if you put your mind to it. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. I will place several links down in the video description to things like my cold and heat protection playlist that will give you ideas on how I protect my trees from the cold and protect my plants from the heat when it gets really hot. If you're curious about any of the things I use in real life in my garden, I will link to all of the products that I use down in the video description in my Amazon storefront. So if you expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, you'll see everything I use in real life that makes me successful. And while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Oh boy, we have extra special dinner tonight. We have tacos, medium rare for mom and dad, and then a side steak rare for a certain handsome boy that has no salt or any kind of other seasonings on it. Just nice and seared for him. Oh boy, I wonder if somebody's excited. Dale, are you hungry? Oh, he definitely wants his steak. Now wait, we're gonna see just how good of a boy Dale can be. Now Dale, whoa! Oh, you're making me look BAD. Wait, Dale, wait. Oh, he's so good. Okay, buddy, go. Yes. No, what are you doing? Oh my goodness, you didn't savor it. Dale, you didn't savor.
Dale, did you even chew that? You
Oh my, that was like throwing a trash can into the back of a trash truck.
Begging for ours.
Oh my goodness, that was absurd. Dale.